I watched the WWE Untold mini documentary on the network titled That's Gotta Be Kane. That's Gotta Be Kane. It's a little over half an hour long. It covers the lead up to the first ever Hell in a Cell match between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker from 1997 and the debut of Kane. It includes interviews with Shawn Michaels. They have a phone interview on there with The Undertaker, a sit-down interview with Glenn Jacobs, where he gets very emotional at the end. I'm sure you've seen that clip circulating on social media. He gets very emotional at the end, talking about a sick kid that he had met in the hospital who had passed away. Definitely check this one out. It's really good, and you get a sense of what was going on behind the scenes at the time as well. We get to see some of the original artwork, the original sketches of what Vince McMahon envisioned the Kane character would look like. He wanted him basically to look like this muscled up superhero with a cape and everything. Remember, capes always make things better, right? I did say this a few weeks ago. I think I even threatened to wear a cape one of these weeks on cam during the live streams. But in fact, Kane did wear a cape, as some of you know, at least for one night. There's that photo of him wearing a cape. It might have been in Madison Square Garden before they ditched it. But what this also reminded me of, and we can talk about some of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time, right? Including Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25, and other matches like Bret Hart against Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13, which may be the greatest match in company history. Also from 1997. Imagine having a year with that match and this first Hell in a Cell match being produced by the same company and not thinking that WWE had a better product than WCW did. I will fight that battle. I fought that battle mightily, walking home from school with my friend every single day who would argue with me until, his last breath about how WCW was so much better than the WWF was. You can look at matches like Bret and Stone Cold, or Shawn and Razor at WrestleMania 10, or Bret Hart and the British Bulldog at Wembley at SummerSlam, or Randy Savage against the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 7. I could go on. But this match here, the first Hell in a Cell, if this is not the greatest match in WWE history, it's damn close. I think I did a buy or sell a few weeks ago in the mailbag. And I think I bought on Bret Hart against Owen Hart in the cage at SummerSlam in 94 over this one. That was a tough call because I love them both. So I can go either way on those, either one of those matches being the greatest. But here, you have one of the greatest matches with the single greatest character debut in company history. Even still, over 20 years later, you will not find me a debut in WWE better than Kane's debut here in 97. I mean, Chris Jericho in 99 had a great debut. Taz had a great debut. The Nexus on Monday Night Raw. Even The Fiend this year had a memorable debut at SummerSlam, great entrance and everything. They're all playing runner-up to Kane's debut of Bad Blood. Michaels and The Undertaker, they had great chemistry working together. Big man against the annoying little man who would sell and bump his ass off for him. They even said in the documentary, Michaels' job was very simple. Shawn Michaels' job was to go out there and to get his ass kicked for 20 minutes. And he did his job well. And I remember thinking how cool it was to see these two in the ring together, for the first time, one-on-one, the month before at that Ground Zero pay-per-view. Because in all the years that these two spent, in the company, Undertaker going back to 1990 and Shawn going back even earlier than that, I think to 88 or so, when the Rockers first came to WWE. All the years that these two guys spent working in the same company together, it was very odd how their paths had never crossed at all before. It was like the last great big match that hadn't been done. And the Hell in a Cell match and their matches at WrestleMania, later on kind of overshadow what I think is a really good match that they had in September that year at Bad Blood. Or, I'm sorry, not Bad Blood, at Ground Zero. At that Ground Zero pay-per-view. But everything about this match here, from the story going in, Michaels accidentally costing Undertaker the championship at SummerSlam, turning on the fans who he felt had turned against him, forming DX. You know, you've got this little side angle going on where Paul Bearer, for months, going back, I think, to June, had been teasing that The Undertaker had a little brother, and that his brother, who was supposedly burned in a fire many years earlier, was still alive. So you've got these two angles happening at one time. Then you have the match itself. First time ever, locked like rats inside this giant cage with a top on it. Michaels is bleeding all over the place. Very violent, especially by WWE standards at that time. A very violent, bloody match. So you have the story, the characters, the match itself, the violence, just the spectacle of it all. And the cherry on the top of the sundae was the Kane debut. He looked the part. He looked like a scary monster. As big as The Undertaker, all jacked up, the badass mask, the red and black, you know, shooting fire out of the ring posts. I mean, who the hell could have predicted that the guy who played Isaac Yankem and Fake Diesel, which they cover in the documentary, would go on to have another 20 years in this company as a Hall of Famer? Not me. I figured he'd be the flavor of the month big man for The Undertaker to beat at WrestleMania, and then he'll disappear. Then it's off to the scrap heap with him. I was happy to be wrong. You know, this original version of Kane, and also I think the Kane who we saw, who came back in very early 2000, those two incarnations of Kane, the Kane that was laying waste to DX and the McMahon-Helmsley faction, you know, when he came back, is probably the most badass monster type that the company has ever had, bar none. That Kane from back then makes Braun Strowman and The Fiend, who I love, but he makes them and the current roster guys today, you know, if Kane is a Rottweiler, he makes the rest of them look like Pomeranians. You know, they're cute, and they think they're all that, but they would be devoured. Absolutely eaten alive. So go watch this documentary. Kane tells some funny stories about the build-up to the Kane character. They get into the night that Michaels disrespected The Undertaker off camera during a commercial break on Raw, and basically called out The Undertaker, knowing that The Undertaker was not actually booked for the show and actually in the building that night, and it made him look weak, and it pissed everybody off backstage. You know, he had a knack, Shawn Michaels did back then, for pissing people off. But the problem is, he would piss off all the wrong people. He was a great heel. I mean, he could piss off the audience. But when you piss off your boss and you piss off your coworkers, that's not the right kind of heat. But even though I say Michaels Undertaker Mania 25 is the greatest, you know, WrestleMania match of all time, this may be the better match of the two. If you look at it, you know, from just the total package. And surely, in my opinion, still the greatest Hell in a Cell match of all time. Undertaker and Mankind is... It's hard to grade that one. You know, it's more of a spectacle than anything else. It's almost unfair to grade that match on the same scale as everything else. I guess it just depends on what your criteria is for a great match.